Hi everyone, it's Julie from the Scrap Zone. If you've been following along, this is video 3 of my sunflower card making series. In this video, we're going to be making 3 cards using the Complete Creativity Cricut collection from Close to My Heart. I started off with this layout right here at the bottom left corner. I've pre-cut all of my pieces. Here I'm showing you how to minimize the white core showing through on darker cardstock. Now, if you use the mirror function in Cricut Design Space right before you cut, you will see that the white core doesn't show as much. So it really does minimize the showing of the white core. Now, I personally like to ink distress all of my pieces, so I'm going to go ahead here and I'm going to ink distress all of them. I also like to keep my little inking tool in this little bucket that I found probably at the dollar store. It just keeps my surface clean and it doesn't mess up my artwork. Ask me how I know that. I've inked up some artwork unintentionally by leaving tools lying around when I'm crafting. So, you might want to find a little way to keep your artwork clean as well. So here you can see me adding ink and it looks beautiful. Like if you look at the first one, which we did minimize the white, but the inking of the cardstock for me is probably my best option. So I'm going to do this for all of the pieces, including this beautiful frame. So this frame was sliced and welded together to create this beautiful overlay that's going to go on top of my card. I'm also going to add a little bit of saffron ink onto the cardstock here to further give dimension to those beautiful sunflowers. So when you put that right on top, you can see that it's got just that really nice glow. So I'm going to go ahead here and I'm going to do that for all 3 sunflowers. I'm also going to add Toffee ink to the center of those sunflowers. I'm going to add a little finger dauber just because it gives me a little bit more control and I don't want the ink to go all over the sunflower. I could have used the espresso ink, but the Toffee was just really nicer and soft. So here you see me ink distressing those cut pieces. I like to run my ink pad all around the edges, and we're just going to start assembling this card. Now there's a few layers to put together, and it takes a little bit of time, but I really like the way that this card turned out. So we've got this beautiful overlay with the 3 nice sunflowers, and then we're going to go ahead here and add those leaves together and those tiny little flowers. Now, I don't know if you remember, but all of these pieces did come from the Complete Creativity cartridge, and it was originally a layout. So you can do whatever you want with those pieces. You just have to use a little imagination and turn them into something different. So here you see me again adding a little bit of color to those smaller sunflowers. They've been cut on the light side, and here I'm adding ink with a sponge dauber because these pieces here are very delicate. So I find that for me, this is the easiest way not to have the ink, or not the ink, but the glue come through. So I thought I'd pull out my shimmer brushes because, I don't know, I just thought it needed a little bit of shimmer. So I'm going to go ahead here and I'm going to use the Toffee shimmer brush, and I'm just going to add a little bit of shimmer to the center of all of those flowers. It just looks really, really pretty. It gives it just another element, and why not, right? We have Toffee shimmer brushes, so let's put them to good use. I'm going to do the same here for the smaller sunflower, or whatever image that is. To me it doesn't really look like a sunflower, but I really liked the combination of both flowers. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a little bit of, I don't know if this one is orange or coral, but I thought these flowers needed a little bit more richness. Like the color was a little bit too bland for me, and when I started using this brush I thought, oh my gosh, this is way too orange, but once it dried it just looked so pretty. So sometimes you kind of have to let it dry a little bit to see the full effect. So here I'm going to pull the sentiments from the Joyful Sunflower stamp set, and I'm just going to stamp them using espresso ink, and I like to, you know, kind of run my sentiment on my ink pad, and I just stamp it directly on. When it's a smaller sentiment and it doesn't have a lot of bulk, I usually don't put the foam pieces underneath, but you know, that's a preference. We all kind of stamp differently, and for me this works. When it's a smaller, more thin sentiment, I don't use the backing. So we're going to go ahead here and finish off this card, and I'm going to add those beautiful flowers. See how they dried really rich and beautiful? I'm going to add them with 3D foam tape, and again, I use the thin 3D foam tape for cards. I just find that it's easier to mail them out, and I can also squeeze in my little leaves directly underneath. So this card is almost done, and yes, it's a little bit more involved, but I thought it was definitely worth the effort. So we're going to put this on a top folding base, and it's going to glue it straight on. And I was trying to figure out if I needed embellishments because it's so pretty the way it is, and I thought, okay, I'll add just a little bit of hemp at the bottom or at the top of those little flowers. I'm going to pull out here my larger glue dots, and what I do here is I just take one and I rub it between my fingers so that it grabs all of those loops and everything is nice and secure. And because it's hemp, you can kind of rough it up a little bit. I like to pull all of my little loops so that they're nice and perfectly round, as much as they can be, of course. And then I'm just going to use my little piercing tool. I'm going to put it all the way down at the bottom. So that was completion of card number 1. We're going to move along here with card number 2. So this is the frame from that layout. Now it does cut really small, as you can see here. It fits on an A2 card, and you may need to take your piercing tool and pop some of those little pieces out, but I really like the way that that turned out. So again, all of my pieces have been cut in Cricut Design Space, and we're going to go ahead and put this card together. Now I wanted to show you how, I guess, dramatic the adding of the ink is on the cardstock, and I have to tell you here that right before this sunflower series, I really did use quite a bit of re-inker on my ink pad, and it made it so much easier. So if your ink is not really coming through, you may want to invest in a little ink, a re-inker, and you'll see that it's so much easier when the ink is actually coming through the way it was meant to. So we're going to go ahead here and we're going to assemble card number 2. I'm just going to add my panel to the front, and then we're going to add that double panel onto the card base. Now I really like how that Cricut piece came through. It looked really, really nice. So here I'm going ahead and I'm adding some glue to the back side of my overlay, and I'm just using my Tombow liquid glue, and it works quite well. And then that way you can just assemble both the top part and the bottom, and it kind of holds down really, really nicely. So here I just wanted to show you once again, just in case you missed it, the toffee that I'm putting in the center of this sunflower. So I'm using the finger dauber only because it gives me more control. And even if those pieces are small, if you're really light with your glue, it doesn't really seep through. So let's assemble this card. So we're going to add our nice flower here right at the top, and of course I'm going to use 3D foam tape. So we're just going to add this beautiful sunflower right at the top, but before we do so, I'm going to add a little bit of shimmer inside the center of the sunflower. I'm going to squeeze just a little bit on my ink block here. This is a tip that I got from Jema. She loves her shimmer brushes, and you know what? It's probably rubbing off on me. When you use that little block, you kind of like, you don't waste as much. So that was a good tip that I picked up from Jema. And here we're going to go ahead and we are going to add our little sentiment on the bottom using 3D foam tape. And of course I'm going to use a little bit of hemp, and I'm just going to roll it around my fingers. Usually, you know what, I'm not sure why in this video series I did not put it on prior to gluing my larger pieces down. I don't know, I guess it was just a different creative process going on. But because I do use 3D foam tape, you can kind of sneak it underneath. And I don't know if you remember, but I just used it right at the center of the flower, so I'm able to lift the edges and then just sneak in my little hemp. So usually I like to put it on prior to, but for whatever reason, I guess there was just so many flowers and I was having a good time, I just decided to put it in afterwards. So here I've got these little sprigs, and you kind of needed something a little bit different. So when I was designing these cards, I didn't want to add another leaf type, but I did wanted to embellish further those cards. So that's completion of card number 2, and we are moving right along here with card number 3, and I think this is my favorite one. So all of those leaves are from Cricut Design Space, and I've welded them together and created that beautiful overlay that you see done in the French vanilla. So I've pre-cut all of my pieces, of course, and I'm just going to add a few finishing touches like the shimmer in the center of those beautiful sunflowers, and we're just going to put this card together. Now this card comes together very, very nicely because that overlay, it kind of takes up the whole back of the front of the card, and it just looks really, really nice. So here I'm just adding a little bit of glue, and I'm just running a bead in the center of those leaves and on the entire frame. And it seemed to be enough glue because I've been taking pictures of these and I've been manipulating them and nothing has popped off. So that's good to know. We're going to add that to the beautiful mixed in. So this is still the mixed in paper pack, just in case you were wondering, and I've used the flip side of the green. It just looked nicer with that overlay. We're gonna pop those little sunflowers, and here I go again, popping them down without putting my hemp, because I know I want to put hemp. I just kind of getting distracted by the sunflowers, I guess. So the first one was put down with dimensional foam, and then that little guy there was just put down straight onto the card base. I'm going to add those little branches, and again you can see here that I didn't want to compete with the leaves at the background, so that's why I chose that particular image. So we're pretty much done here. I'm just going to add a couple of more pieces of hemp, and this completes video number 3 using Cricut pieces to make these beautiful sunflower cards. Now I hope that you've enjoyed this series, and I'm going to have one more video to share with you. I'm going to also link the entire series at the end of this video. But before I do that, I just thought that this little sentiment here needed something, you know, it needed something else. I didn't want to hide that beautiful overlay, but I thought it needed just a little bit of hemp. So I pulled a little piece out and I wrapped it a few times around that pennant. And I just think that it gave it just enough to finish off this card. So I hope that you're enjoying this series, and if you're brand new to my channel, I invite you to subscribe and watch the entire 4 videos that are part of this collection. And once again, thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and I hope you're having a fantastic day. Click this video right here to take you back to the entire collection. Thank you.